Hello, travelers. Welcome to Reach the World. For over 20 years, Reach the World has used virtual exchange to inspire youth to become curious, confident, and compassionate global citizens. My name is Tim, and this week, together with Citi's E for Education campaign, we're going on a journey to explore how global citizens can put that valuable skill set to work as part of a global career. Over the course of 5 days, we'll be connecting with Citi employees in 9 financial capitals across 6 continents. They have generously agreed to share their stories, observations, and tips for finding success in this highly interconnected global economy. For a complete listing of upcoming Citi Global Career Journey live stream events, check out athome.reachtheworld.org. Today, we're continuing the Citi Global Career Journey with a stop in Singapore to speak with Citi employees Celine Cheng and Priscilla Now. Celine and Priscilla are joining us virtually to talk about working, living, and thriving professionally in Singapore. And I should add, they're joining us from 12 hours in the future, and I really appreciate them staying up late to be with us today. Before we meet Celine and Priscilla, though, I want to welcome the teachers, students, Reach the World travelers, and early career professionals who are watching this live stream today. Please use the YouTube chat bar to let us know you're here, where you're joining from, and to share any questions you have for our guests as we go. We'll get to as many questions as we can in the next 45 minutes. And with that, let's get underway. Celine and Priscilla, welcome to Reach the World.
Thank you, Tim. Super excited to be here and to be meeting so many people and to share, my career journey with Citi Singapore and also about Singapore in general.
Yeah, fantastic. We're excited to hear more. And Priscilla, hello, welcome. We're going to launch right into some great slides that you prepared as sort of an introduction to Singapore in general. Let me get those up. All right. How's that looking?
That looks great. That is the Singapore skyline. Yep.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, Celine, you want to get us started?
Sure. So, we're not sure how many of you have been to Singapore, how many of you have read about Singapore. So we figured we'll put together 2 quick slides, one to give you some fun facts about Singapore and one a little bit more statistics and facts about Citi in Singapore. So let's do that, Tim. Let's move on to the next slide.
Okay.
If you could just put it in like slideshow mode.
Yeah. Do you want these? Okay. Let's see here. How's this looking for you? Is that better?
Yep. Now we wanted to put it in slideshow mode, in presentation mode.
Yeah. Okay. I'm seeing it as slideshow mode now. Maybe it'll just take a second to catch up for you. All right, are you seeing fun facts about Singapore?
Yeah, we are, but this is still in edit mode. It's all right, don't worry. It should be on the bottom right. There should be like a button that blows it out.
All right, let's give this another try.
There you go.
Better? Perfect. There we go. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So we put together a couple of fun facts about Singapore. First thing, this came to mind right away for Priscilla and myself. It's like, we have to tell people we're a foodie nation. We travel for food. It's part of our history because Singapore, it's made up of a lot of migrants. Like my grandfather was a migrant. He came to Singapore from China many years ago. And we are very multicultural. So we have people of many different races. And it's an absolute melting pot of cultures here. And that totally shows in the food scene as well. Locals are very passionate about food. Well, a lot of our colleagues who come to Singapore to visit, they all tell us, you guys talk about food a lot in Singapore. We're like, yep, let's do. It's all about where we're having lunch, what you're having for dinner, where you're going this weekend. It's all about the food. And you will find delicious food in Singapore across a very large spectrum. You can get yummy meals for a couple of dollars at what we call a hawker center. or a food court, which is like it's a big place where you could have up to 100 different food stalls selling 100 different kinds of food all in one place. Or you could go to one of those, Michelin-starred restaurants that we have and spend a couple $100 as well. When we go overseas on holidays, before we even go on a holiday, first thing we do is to go check out all the different restaurants you want to go to and get your reservations. So I think in short, it's quite safe to say in Singapore, we live to eat. We'll move on to point 2, and Priscilla will talk about that a little bit.
Hi guys. Sorry I was a little late. That is absolutely unacceptable. Please don't follow suit. I was rushing home. But yeah, hi. I'm part of Citi Singapore. I'm a markets analyst, or rather on a management associate program in Citi Markets. So Celine put me in today. She's like, yeah, we have to do this together. You got to share your experience to the students on Reach the World. Yeah, and I will touch on the second point right now. We are often in social media on certain platforms that you articles that you read online. We are often mistaken to be a part of another country. But please know, we are a sovereign nation. Singapore is a sovereign nation. We are not part of China, and we are not part of Malaysia. I think Cartoon Network once mistakenly labeled us as being a part of Malaysia. Please don't. And we're also not a part of China as well. Often when I backpack and travel to other countries, I get this question a lot. So yes, please don't. We are very different.
All right, number 3 fun fact. We are a fine country, but you do not get caned for chewing gum. This is like the biggest misconception everyone has about Singapore when I go outside of Singapore. And they go like, you get caned for chewing gum in Singapore. No, we do not. It is not illegal to chew gum in Singapore. It's only illegal to import and sell gum. So if you are coming to Singapore, don't worry. If you have a stick of chewing gum in your pocket, you're absolutely fine. And since I think 2002 or so, dental gum is also allowed. So you can get it at pharmacies, certain type of gums. It's not that bad, but we love it. We never get the subway doors being stuck. You never end up walking on the streets with gum underneath your shoes. Never happens in Singapore.
And in terms of size, we are one of the 20 smallest countries in the world. And relative to the US, we are actually, we're actually smaller than you guys by 15,000 times. So in fact, I was just Googling the latest statistics on Singapore's size. So in Singapore, we do have, because we're so small, but yet very densely populated, our current population is around 6.2 million. Because we are so densely populated, the government is always trying to reclaim land in Singapore. So based off the latest statistics, we are 719 square kilometers, which puts the United States about 13,673 times bigger than Singapore. So it's no longer 15,000 times based on the latest statistics. It's 13.6K times. Yeah, and the population in Singapore is 6.2 million. We are quite densely populated. I think we're one of the most densely populated countries or cities in the world. And yeah, so putting it in perspective, there are about 300 million more people in the US.
So over here, you will hear a very interesting language being spoken. It's called Singlish. It's like English, but it's a mix of vocabulary from many different languages and dialects. Well, totally based on the fact that it's so multiracial. So it's not uncommon to hear when Singaporeans speak in one sentence, we could mix up English, Mandarin, Malay, a few different languages in one sentence. And there are also very specific Singlish terms which have even made it to the Oxford Dictionary. I think 27 different Singlish words have made it to the Oxford Dictionary. So a good example is the word choke. We like to use the word choke. It actually means to reserve a seat. So if I speak to Priscilla in Singlish, I would say something like, hey, Priscilla, tomorrow we're going for lunch, right? You go earlier and choke seat first lah. What it means is, you go earlier and you go and reserve a seat for us first. But in Singlish, you'll be like, you go and choke seat first. So it's actually a very efficient language, but it'll take you a while to catch some of these vocabulary so that you understand better.
Yeah. Oh, and super proud of this, but we are one of the world's greenest cities. So even though we are very densely populated and we have very limited land resources, but nearly half of Singapore's land area is under green cover. So we have actually many parks, nature reserves, and there are also various different pockets of like plant life housed in like very unusual places. So we have this. So in Singapore, you would see we're kind of called a concrete jungle because we have so many high-rise buildings, and also we live in what people call HDB, so Housing Development Board apartments. But it's not. It's actually quite typical to find like pockets of green spaces in all of this living HDB living conditions. Like we might have a farm downstairs on one of the HDB where people are trying to grow their own plants and crops. And also there are certain, like industrial or commercial garden or garden concept places. So for instance, there is this hotel in Singapore. It's Park Royal. It has a hotel and a garden concept with a 4-story cascading vertical garden. So green spaces and like garden city, like it features very heavily in a lot of living spaces design in Singapore itself. And also one of our biggest nature reserves, the Bukit Timah Nature Reserve in Singapore, is in particular, it is said to contain more tree species in a single hectare than the total number of tree species found in North America. So yeah, I would say it's really one of the greenest cities and countries in the world.
All right, this is an interesting fun fact. We are the fastest pedestrians in the world. So there was a research done, and Singapore actually came up top. So they measured how fast the average person walks, 60 feet or something like that. So it's good to know we're first in something like that. You'll be surprised to know that like New York City comes in 8th place and London comes in 12th place in the survey, in the research. So we like to believe that that's what helps to keep us healthy and age more slowly, because it's good exercise that we walk fast.
That's how I got home so fast just now, by the way.
Exactly. Good example.
And how I ended up late. Yeah, but I was actually quite surprised that we are the fastest pedestrians in the world. When I was in London, I felt like everyone was walking faster than me though. So I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that this is true, but anyways, we have to be like first in something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this actually came as a surprise for me. I'm not sure whether this came as a surprise for Celine, but we are actually made up of 63 different islands. I didn't know we had so many islands. I was thinking maybe 10, 15, but it turned out
I would have guessed 20
63.
max. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's maybe Singapore is larger than I thought. Some of the more prominent islands would be Sentosa. That's kind of a touristy space. It has what is that theme park called? Universal Studio is built there. Yeah. So it's a kind of tourist destination. When you come to Singapore, you have to visit Sentosa.
Well, in the COVID situation, we all go to Sentosa as well, because that's the only place we can go.
Yes. Otherwise, there are some other like islands that are, I would say, relatively untouched. It's more, I think it's kind of set aside by the government as well, as I would say, green space, or where often like weekends there's this island called Pulau Ubin. I used to be part of like the Green Club in my school. Yes, I used to be a geek and nerdy, and I used to be into all the green and recycling stuff. We would go to Pulau Ubin almost every weekend for like cycling, green tours, just to be in touch with nature. And yeah, so I would say a lot of the different islands are still unexplored, at least by myself, but they probably contain a lot of biodiversity in Singapore. And it's intentional that I think the government kind of leaves it untouched for us. And yes, that concludes the end of the first fun facts about Singapore. Moving on. So yeah, we wanted to share a little bit more about Citibank Singapore itself. So Citibank Singapore is a division of Citibank North America in the United States. And it actually opened its first premises in Singapore in 1902. The exact date was 1st July 1902. It was then known as International Banking Corporation, not even known as Citibank. And it's actually the first US bank to set up a branch in Singapore. In 1980s, in 1980s itself, not 1982, not yet 1982, Singapore, Citibank in Singapore was the first to popularize the use of ATM machines. So I'm not sure whether you guys still go to an ATM machine or is it all digital banking for you already? But yeah, like ATM machines is where you draw out cash. Hopefully I don't have to tell the younger generations that I will feel really old. And Citibank then went on to establish its first global consumer banking division in 1982 to cater to the needs of individuals and small businesses. In 1990 itself, Citi Singapore created the first telephone banking service, which was manned 24 hours by our Citi staff. So in 2003, Citibank Singapore Limited got incorporated locally. It was the first qualifying full bank in Singapore itself. In 2011, we went on to establish 2 innovation labs. And in 2020, Citi Singapore went on to open its largest wealth hub globally, targeting kind of a different market, the high net worth market. And it seems like that is the direction that the bank wants to take, at least in Singapore.
Right.
So
So,
pass it on to Celine.
Citi in Singapore is very big. And I remember when I was a student, my idea of banking was just really the consumer banking piece, right? Because when you think about banking, you think about credit cards, you think about car loans, you think about housing loans, all that, it's all falls under what we call the global consumer bank. And that's what we as, you and me are familiar with growing up, right? It's where you go to deposit your money. It's where you go to get a loan. It's where you go to get credit cards. And Citi, has a huge consumer bank presence in Singapore. Although we don't have that many branches, but now with technology and all that, everything is online. As Priscilla explained earlier, we're very focused on remaining at the forefront of technology and using technology. So, we were first to do the ATM, the phone banking, and all of that. And now most of our banking services are actually done digitally and online as well. So you actually do not need that many physical retail presence, to be honest. Now, then there is what we call the ICG group, the institutional client group, right? That it's where our clients are top tier corporations, the multinationals, the financial institutions, and governments primarily. Now, the ICG group is made up of many different businesses. You have markets and security services where Priscilla and I work. So if you think foreign exchange, equities, commodities, trading and sales, that all falls under the markets and security services. Then we have the treasury and trade solutions where we look at cash management and trade management. Then we have the commercial bank, which targets and focuses on helping the SMEs, the small and medium enterprises, as well as the BCMA division, which covers the larger top tier corporates and the multinationals. There is, of course, the private bank. Private banking, it's growing tremendously, and Singapore is becoming a very large wealth hub, as we call it, for the region. That is also part of the ICG, where you focus on the ultra high net worth and family offices in Singapore. Last but not least, just to highlight that, we actually have about 8,500 employees in Singapore. considering how small Singapore is, 8,500 makes us one of the largest foreign banking employers in Singapore for sure. It is a very significant hub for Citi. We house many of our regional teams. I hold a regional job, but I'm based in Singapore, but I cover many countries in Asia. Priscilla actually has a global responsibility looking at our electronic FX distribution, but she's based in Singapore. So she stays up late a lot, obviously, to speak to colleagues in the US. But that goes to show how global we are. We also have the picture you see on this slide. That is our Asia Square office. It is in the Central Business District. But we also have another large premises where we call Changi Business Park, and that is very near the airport. When you land from the airport, it's like a 5-minute drive. That we have a large number of employees there. It hosts our innovation labs as well. We have a large operations and technology presence there, and that provides the ONT support for all of the Asia region, not just Singapore, which is why we have so many people. Yep, I think that kind of concludes a quick introduction about Singapore and Citi Singapore. So over to you, Tim.
Yeah.
Ask us
All
any
right.
questions.
Yeah, fantastic. Celine, Priscilla, thank you for that wonderful introduction to living and working in Singapore. Gave us a good sense of where you live and what's unique about Singapore. Certainly a special place. I want to dive into your global career paths because that's something that's really fascinating to our students and the audience today who's on the cusp of getting into their own career and are looking to incorporate aspects of international cooperation and global interconnectedness into their career. So I know Celine and Priscilla, you're at sort of different points in your career. I wonder if you could talk about how you first got interested in working with the larger world and being part of this global workforce. Celine, you want to start with you, or should we start with Priscilla?
So you want me to talk about my journey with Citi?
Yes,
or
yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. So just to set the stage right, Priscilla and I have a very different profile. I've been with the bank 22.5 years. Priscilla, how long have you been with the bank?
Well, since I actually started as an intern, I went on, as a summer analyst and then finally as an MA. Officially, I've been with Citi for 2 years, but actually since my internship days, I've been with Citi for close to 4 years.
But Priscilla is so critical here because all this recruitment and hiring is so fresh in her mind, which is why I insisted that, Priscilla, you have to join me, because I'm sure many of you have a lot of questions about the graduate, and the undergraduate and graduate hiring process, and she's here to answer all of those questions for you. I mean, for me, that was a long time ago. But I think for me, it would be more to share the experiences that I've managed to have with Citi. So I joined Citi in 1998 as a management associate as well. Well, I never imagined what, and where I would have traveled to because of my career with Citi. And I would never have imagined that I would have hung around for over 20 years. But as they say, before you know it's 5 years, before you know it's 10 years, and before you know it's 20 years. But it's been amazing, and it's been great, which is why I've been around. There's just absolutely no push factor for me to leave. So as a management training, I think you get really good exposure, especially when you're a fresh grad and you're not really sure what you want to do, because you get an opportunity to rotate to different departments and try out different things. So you get a feel of where your strengths are, what fits you better. There's also a bit of pressure because it's a bit of a beauty contest. At the end of it, you're like, somebody please give me a job, right? Because there's a bit of pressure to actually secure and land something as well. But I landed my first job with the corporate FX sales team in Singapore. So my clients were the large corporations and multinationals, and we helped them on a lot of their foreign exchange needs. And this was over 20 years ago, so everything was still very manual based. Everything was still being done on the phone. I'm not sure, a lot of people didn't even have cell phones at that point in time when I first started working. And the internet as well. Not every terminal had internet access in the bank at that point. So it was a very different world. A couple of years later, I got sent to I got selected for what we call a fast track program. So the good thing about Citi is that in terms of talent development, especially I would say in the early stages of your career, there are just so many different programs and so many different opportunities for you to jump into if you're keen. So I managed to get selected for the fast track program, and they sent me to New York for 2 years. The key here is to take you out of your comfort zone, put you in a place you've never been to, and put you in a job that you've never done before. So from doing FX sales, I moved to then the IBD division and focused on a lot of the structured financing and project financing work for clients in North America and Latin America. And it was like really, go swim in the deep end, totally different place. First time I left home, I did my university/college in Singapore. So it was my first opportunity to actually leave the country, work away from the country, away from my parents, away from my family. But I think it was an absolute eye-opening experience. You get exposed to a brand new culture. You see how people work differently. And there's a lot of learnings for sure. You learn the good stuff, you learn the bad stuff, but you take that all with you when you go home. And you need to, think for yourself, what works better here, what works better there, and try and put together the best of both worlds when you come back. These are the experiences that sit with you. And then following that, I moved back to Singapore. I did a bunch of things, but I got sent to Korea for a period of time as well, because we had just acquired a bank in Korea, and they needed some help with the business development and analysis work. So again, it was another eye-opening experience. Living in a different country that, and they speak a different language. A lot of some of the colleagues did not speak very good English at that point. But it was a great test of your soft skills, really, to learn to work with colleagues who speak a different language from a different bank, a different culture. Again, great learning experience. And I came back to Singapore. I joined the E-Solutions team, the EFX Solutions team, E meaning electronic. So this was in 2005 or so. We were really focused on automating and digitizing a lot of our foreign exchange needs, and we were building our platforms. We were getting our clients to do electronically. So that again was, I would say, having that experience to be part of the transformation of the whole FX business in the bank, incredible. And then I got sent to New York a second time in end of 2005 to run the Latin America EFX Solutions business. At the time, everything was just starting there. We were building a team. We were getting the platform rolled out. But again, a new geography, covering Latin America. I was like, what does everybody speak Spanish and Portuguese? It was an eye-opening experience. But you make many good friends. You have a whole new network of friends and colleagues in a new place, and you learn a lot by having a new role. By then, I was put into a managerial role, so it's very different from being a transactor, right? Being a transactor, you do what you're good, you do what you're best at. But being a manager requires a totally different skill set: people retention, people motivation, more strategic thinking. So again, it was a great leap of faith the bank had in me to put me in that role and to send me so far away. But again, I took away a lot from that. Then I came back to Singapore end of 2008, and then I focused on transforming the FX electronic FX business in Singapore since then.
All right, Celine, thank you. All right, Priscilla, let's hear from you. What has your global career path been like?
So actually that was actually my first time hearing Celine's career and journey as well. I never knew you went to Korea. Wow. It would have been, I would have imagined it would have been so tough. So I would say 2 years back, I got sent to New York for a short 1 week period to roll out some initiative that we had there. And I was working with one of the Citi colleagues the first thing he asked me when he knew I was coming from Singapore is, how is Celine? And I was like, yeah, I was like, oh, how did you know Celine? But yeah, I mean, that's just like testament to, like how global, we are. I think as a bank, people, they get sent across abroad, given opportunities abroad as well. Celine, key example. For me, sorry, let me just talk about myself now. um, for me, I joined Citi Singapore as an intern. So one of the things in Citi, I think our HR has come up with a lot of different programs in the bank. So specifically, I was still in school then. I was still in university. I think I was in my second year, second semester. And I joined Citi as an intern on the 6 months program. So it was a 6 months internship program. I was on the business management desk in corporate sales. And one of my first impression, I think in the first few months of joining Citi, was that I met a lot of very interesting people on the trading floor. So I sat on the trading floor then, as I do now. But it was very interesting to meet like people who are coming from many different countries. It was very diversified on the floor. You don't have just Singaporeans. You had Indian colleagues. You had colleagues from the US, from the UK, from France. Like you have people from all over the world. Korea as well. Sitting in Citi Singapore. I was working with very fun, very smart people, and I really, really liked it there. Like that was when I thought like, oh, I don't want to leave. Like it's really fun and interesting here. So what I did, and this is kind of unique to me, but I decided to change my program to a part-time program. So I carried on. I extended my internship with Citi, and I was studying in the weekends and working during the weekdays. I liked it because in school I was studying finance. So I saw an immediate application of what we learned in school to what I was doing at work. And definitely helped me learn much faster, much better. But of course, juggling school and work at the same time was quite challenging for me. I admit that like I had to take time off when it was close to exams. So it was definitely, not just pure working, half study, half work. In Citi, at least in more recent years, so I might be a bit out of touch already with the recruitment program because they do change very frequently. But for me, when I wanted to enter Citi formally, recruitment-wise, HR HR mandates that we will only recruit from the summer analyst pool. So in Citi Singapore, there is this summer analyst program. It is another form of internship. It is I would say, a more competitive internship program where final year students, they will do a 10-week rotation in a designated arm in Citi Singapore. So there is the markets division, markets and security services. There is the treasury and trade services, which Celine just shared just now, TTS. So on and so forth. There's banking as well. There's a private bank. Each of them will have a summer analyst program, a 10 weeks rotation program. And at the end of 10 weeks, depending on your performance on multiple different fronts, they would then decide whether to extend a full-time offer to you or not. So I went through the summer analyst program, got a full-time offer, and finally joined Citi officially in 2018. So that was how I entered Citi. I would say it was 2 long years, but it was worth. I would say
Priscilla,
it was worth
talk
the
about your
experience.
training program. Like you went to London and stuff, right?
Oh yeah. Okay, yes. So as part of the management associate program that I got into, we get sent to London for, I think it was for 3 weeks for me. So I know markets, we get sent to London for training. Private bank, I think, got sent. We were really, really envious of them, but yeah, they got sent to New York, we got sent to London. When we were in London, we got to meet the London MAs as well. So, Citi has this program in many different countries and hubs. They brought in the London MAs as well. We also saw, I would say the EMEA MAs. So MAs from Spain, from France, they all flew to London for the 3 weeks training program. It was a lot of fun. It was a bit of hard work as well because we were in full-time training programs like 9 a.m. or I think 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. You would be in class. There would be an assessment at the end of every week. And I think this kind of counts into our ranking and determines what kind of placements we get. I'm not so sure about that part. But yeah, it gets shared with the managers like Celine, so Celine would know a bit more. And so we start off with a training program where we get sent to London, and then when you're on the program, you get to rotate on different desks. In markets itself, we have different asset classes. There is FX, there is rates, there is commodities, there's equities. Did I miss out anything? There's futures and clearing as well. These are the different asset classes, so which assets you will deal with. In terms of functions wise, typically there's sales role, there's a trading role, and then there's a structuring role. So how I would differentiate them very simply is sales will face the clients, trading will manage the risks and face the market. Structuring will be involved in more like complex deals, so like more mathematically complex, like calculated or calculation deals will involve structuring. In the rotation program, we were mandated to try different functions and different asset classes. So for me, I started out with corporate sales, which was a desk that I was familiar with. I then did futures and clearing in a more risk kind of role. And then before I finally went on to do rates trading. And right now, in my final placement, I'm with the corporate EFX or electronic FX distribution team. So I would say part of Celine's team as well in corporate sales. Just that we kind of look at a slightly different aspect of electronic FX. Celine's team looks at more like electronic FX solutions, while we look at how we can get FX liquidity or electronic FX liquidity out to our clients. So yeah, that is my, I would say, 4-year journey with Citi so far.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. What a great perspective. I want to bring in Reach the World Traveler Chelsea, who's been joining us today and has some questions for you. Chelsea, go ahead.
Hi. First, I want to say I really enjoyed both of your presentations and stories, just because it was very animated, and you make me want to pack my bags right now and head there, like beg for a job for Citi, because it sounds really good. Because I'm interested in finance as well, and I'm working in finance right now too. So question is more about the work culture. I know you've mentioned that you do travel a lot. How is it in terms of flexibility with the day-to-day work? Like, is it looked down upon to like get time off, or like just work a little bit earlier on Fridays, maybe get off earlier? And then how is it like with in terms of leadership within the firm, especially opportunities for women?
I think
Celine, I think you should take that. Yeah.
You are empowered from the time you're very junior. So, as long as you get your work done, it doesn't matter where you do it, how you do it. And today in COVID's world, all the more, a lot of people are working from home. So you really have to trust that they deliver. As you can see, my kid is yelling in the back. She's home. I think in terms of opportunity as women, definitely. There is a huge focus on diversity. There is a huge focus on, giving women equal opportunity in the organization. I think maybe Priscilla, you talk about what it's like, being quite new in the bank. How do you feel is the culture?
Yeah, so I have friends who work in other industries as well, tech, insurance, and I mean, comparing their experiences with mine, of course, it's just hearsay. I haven't worked in those companies before, but Citi really does a very good job in promoting diversity. So in fact, like Celine would testify to that, like we put it as part of like managers' goals and KPIs, key performing indicators, that they have to maintain a certain gender or like balance within their team. Like it is a goal that they will report and they will be assessed against. And when so there is that formal aspect to it, but there are also a lot of on the ground initiatives where we are empowered to start and get other people involved. So there is actually a Citi Singapore Women's Network. Right now we're a bit inactive because of COVID, but otherwise we will try to meet up for drinks, and it's across the different banking arms. So across markets, TTS, across Citi. And I meet a couple of friends there whom I actually do hang out with after work from time to time. Not so often again because of COVID now, but we do try to meet up once in a while. Yeah.
Okay, great question, Chelsea. I want to bring a question in from the chat, from the viewers who are watching the live stream. We have a great question from Soren, who was with us earlier and left a question. He's hoping for Celine and Priscilla to answer. He wanted to know, how difficult is it to relocate and work in Singapore as a US citizen, if you have any perspective on that? And what cultural differences should one really need or should one understand before coming to work and live in Singapore?
Right. Okay, so based on my understanding, Singapore is it's a very nice place to live for expats. Yeah, I'm not so sure how difficult it is to relocate from US to Singapore. But yeah, I don't think there are any like red tapes or I would say relatively easy. You have to get a job in order to get an employment pass before you can work here. Definitely like most of the other first world countries in the world as well. But otherwise it's relatively easy. Things that you might face, as with all other cities in the world, are rents are high. Rental is not cheap. But it's cheaper than Hong Kong. But yeah, you will get by, and it's one of the most livable cities in the world. Celine shared that like food is everywhere. It's very accessible, not just in the terms of like physical proximity, but it's very accessible in terms of economic terms. You can find very good food in hawker centers for like maybe $4-5 over here. In terms of cultural differences, we started as a migrant like nation, so we're very used to having different nationalities around us. I myself, like my best friends are from all over the world. Like I studied with them in school. In high school, I studied with Vietnamese, with Indians, with Thai nationals, like so. In school already, we are exposed to many different cultures. But yeah, just one thing to note, you definitely need to know your food in order to get around here. I don't know, Celine, do you have anything?
Most people come for one, they think they'll be here for a year or two. 10 years later, they're still here. It says a lot. I know of so many colleagues who are like that.
Well, it sounds like a very global city. So as long as you're pursuing your global competencies and the kinds of things that Reach World Travelers are already doing, prepares you for living in such an international place. That was a great question, Soren. Thank you so much. I have a question from Roman, also in the chat. He wanted to know, I think, Priscilla, it was you. You mentioned the rotational program. Could you tell us again what the name of that program is and whether that's open to new graduates and whether or not there's any sort of certifications or licenses that you need in order to participate in that?
Right. So the program that I'm on is called the Management Associate Program. You have to be a graduate, so you have to graduate from a university in order to apply for it. So it's open to new graduates. Do we have to, sorry, the question was, do we have to do any certifications, is it, in order to qualify? No, I'm not aware of any certifications, but there will be many rounds of like interviews and all. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, Chris, as you covered earlier, the crux is to get into the internship program, get into the summer program first, right? Because that kind of funnels in for the associate program.
So I'm not so sure about the rationale behind, but yes, they do. A few years back, I think it was 3-4 years back, they would just hire for the management associate program, at least in Singapore. But more recently, in the past 2 years or so, they would only extend an offer to interns who have graduated from the summer analyst program. At least that's the experience in Singapore itself. I'm not so sure about other countries or other hubs.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like this is also a program that's available at Citi locations in cities around the world too. If you wanted to get your foot in the door somewhere, and within the corporate culture, you can jump between offices. We've heard lots of great stories this week about, including yourself, Priscilla, who've been the London office and the New York office, and Celine, you've been to Korea and other places as well. So it's a place where you can move around a lot if you like to travel. Fantastic. Chelsea, I would love to give you the last question today. We're right up on sort of our time limit today, but thank you for joining us on camera. Go ahead if you want a final question here.
Just when you do get to travel, like Celine went to New York for about 2 years, I guess, and also Priscilla. Well, Priscilla is more like London and trading, right? I was curious about, does Citi help you with finding apartments to live in? Like get
Yes,
of course.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
They're gonna
cool.
help you settle down. They help you with the work visas. They help you with everything.
Oh, okay,
I mean,
cool.
that's the thing about, we're a very global bank, and if you're looking for a career that's going to take you places, gives you a lot of opportunities to travel and meet people in different countries and build network and friendships in different countries, this is an absolutely great place to be.
Okay, thank you.
Great question, Chelsea. I think that's a great place for us to end. I really want to just add one more question of my own. And since we've gotten through all the hard stuff, I want to finish with a fun question. Both of you have spent a lot of time in Singapore. And as our sort of local hosts to this amazing place, what is the one place you'd recommend that we absolutely go and see if we were coming? Maybe we've talked about one of the more touristy locations. What's like a local favorite spot that people who visit Singapore should come and enjoy?
That's an easy one for me. I live in Katong, so you can Google it. I'll take you to where I live in Katong. It's a very interesting mix of old and new. So you have the brand new shopping malls, but you have all these old conservation shop houses, and they host some of the really interesting shops and restaurants and cafes. It's a very interesting neighborhood. So I would take you for a walk around my neighborhood. Call me.
No, and it's also, sorry, I have to back Celine up. Like, one of my favorite local dishes is Katong Laksa.
Yeah, it's there.
And the most authentic ones can only be found in Katong. So I only eat my Katong Laksa there. Yes.
All right, so we have consensus. That's rare, actually. We have consensus.
Now, what about you, Priscilla? Where would you take somebody if there was one place?
Yeah, for me, actually, it would usually revolve around food. Like, we would plan to go somewhere to try out something new. For me, usually the spot is Bugis. Bugis is where we have this Bugis street where there are a lot of like I would say young people, more like young adult kind of like stores. There's also a lot of different kinds of food. And then there is a more like formal, big shopping mall, Bugis Junction there. There is the National Library that's next door to Bugis Junction. My friends and I used to hang out there quite a lot when we were in our studying school days. There's also a street with a lot of very famous local cuisine, chicken rice. There's also Thai food there. So the really interesting thing about Singapore really is that like you have along Purvis Street, which is in Bugis itself, you have like a very famous local chicken rice store where you can get it for like $5 a plate. Next to it, you have a very famous Italian restaurant where you might spend a few $100s for on that meal, but it's just next door, and it's along the same street. So you have a lot of different options that's just a few meters away. So yeah,
Fascinating. I'm frantically writing down these recommendations. So I hope
I bet you're all
watching
hungry
it well.
just listening to us already.
Well, both of you are at the very end of your workday. I really want to thank you both for spending this time with us today. It was such an interesting conversation. This is it's so great to learn about Singapore and about your global career journeys. Thank you also to our entire on-camera and live audiences for the wonderful questions today. Reach the World Citi Global Career Journey continues this week. We have 2 more stops. We're going to Sydney and Kampala still before the week is over. How does living and working in those cities compare to what we just heard from Celine and Priscilla? I'll be asking Citi employees in those cities the same questions in the coming days so we can make head-to-head comparisons and you can take the next steps on your personal global career journeys. So special thanks to the Citi E4 Education campaign, and to all our many Citi volunteers for making this experience possible, especially Celine and Priscilla today. Again, thank you so much for staying up with us. You can find the whole lineup of upcoming events at athome.reachtheworld.org. We're off to Sydney next. Hope to see you all there. Thanks again.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you in Qatar.